Hello everyone and welcome to Tutoring Tuesday. It's Kristen here and I'm so excited to have you all join tonight's event we are going to be focusing on adding and subtracting fractions. And specifically we're focusing on adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators. And what's interesting to me is sometimes when we are taking such an easy, truly easy concept, right? You have a half a cup and you've got another half a cup and you add the half cups together and you get a 1 cup, right? Or 2 halves, which equals a whole. But all of a sudden you go into this mindset that you need to do all of these procedures to these fractions to actually add them together. And I'm here tonight to let you guys know that that's not necessary in order to arrive at the correct solution. So really, I want you guys focusing on what does addition truly mean, right? We're taking 2 parts and we're adding them together to come up with a whole, right? And then what does subtraction really mean? We have a whole and we're breaking it off into 2 parts. And so the idea here is that I want you guys to really focus on the action of addition, putting together, and the action of subtraction, which is taking apart or taking away. And oftentimes, and at least if you're anything like me, when I was taught how to add and subtract fractions, I was taught a procedure. I was taught to change all these fractions to improper fractions or fractions more than a whole and do all these crazy things, and then I have to divide and all this stuff. My mind was completely 100% confused. I had no idea what I was doing. I lost what it meant to add things together. Like I was just focusing on, a procedure, trying to get the right answer and not knowing if I was correct. So I really want you guys, if you have kids at home that are struggling with this concept, I want you to just bring it back to basics, right? Take out your measuring cups and show them what it means to take a half a cup, another half a cup, and pour it together and how it equals a whole. What we talk about in school and what we use in school, I'm going to be posting in the comments so that you guys can understand. But what I'm going to be showing you tonight is something that you can easily use at home, which are pictures, otherwise known as representation or models, that you can help your kids see what is actually happening when we add and subtract fractions. The key here, though, is we're not just adding fractions. We're adding fractions that all of a sudden it's going to be bigger than a whole. We're also taking some subtraction and we have to what we call regroup or rename our fractions. So it's going to be kind of tricky. So thanks for joining. And as always, if you feel as if this would be helpful for any of your network, please feel free to share. And after this video, I'm going to upload it to my YouTube channel and I'll post the link below. All right, let's get started, shall we? All right, let me flip you guys around. All right, so I'm going back to old school paper, because last week with the dry erase, it was really hard to see. So like I said, we're going to be focusing tonight on fractions with like denominators. So first we're going to focus on addition. And remember, what is truly addition? It means that you're taking a part plus another part and you're arriving at a whole. Okay? So let's think about 2 1/4. And whenever I think of fractions, I think of either running or I think of cooking or whatever the case may be. So say I'm trying to figure out the total distance that I've run for the past 2 days. So today or yesterday I ran 2 1/4 mile, and today I ran 1 1/4 mile. So what is my total distance? So oftentimes, and I hear this all the time, is where teachers are automatically, we need to make this an improper, we need to make this an improper and add them together. I'm going to stop you right there. That makes 0 sense. So what does this actually look like? So we have 2 holes, so I'm going to draw out 2 holes. And like I said, in school, we have fraction bars and towers, which I will post in the comments below, so the kids are actually building these models. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to show you what you can do at home. So I'm going to shade in 2 1/4. So 2 holes and a 1/4. I'm going to add 1 more hole and 1 more 1/4. So now you can easily see that if I add my holes together, I have 2 plus 1 hole, which equals 3 holes, and 1/4 and another 1/4 equals 2/4. We can rename this fraction because they can clearly see that that also equals a half. So the fourth grade standard, either one of these would be an acceptable answer. 3 2/4 is the same as 3 1/2. So what I did was basically took this fraction, drew it out, took this fraction, drew it out or represented it in a model form, and then I just added them together to come up with my whole. So I ran 3 1/2 miles. All right, let's do another example. This time what I'm going to do so that you guys can share or you guys can see how you can use this at home, I'm going to show you 2 different colors. That way you can really help your kids see the breakdown. So I will use, let's use orange. So my first fraction is 3 3/5. And we're going to add, in my next fraction, I'm going to actually use a different color just so that you guys can see. Actually, I'll just use my gray. 2 3/5. Okay. So I want to combine these 2 fractions together, right? So for example, if it's a recipe and we want to figure out how many dry products there are, 2 1/4 cup, 1 1/4 cup of flour, sugar, whatever, combining it. Same thing here. So we're combining these 2 quantities. I'm going to go back down to just talking about what I remember from addition, or about addition from first grade and second grade and third grade and fourth grade. So I'm going to take my 3 wholes. I'm going to represent them. 1, 2, 3, and I have 3/5. Notice that I'm actually lining up my fifths with my whole, which is right above it, and there's a reason for that, and you're going to see that in a moment. So I'm going to shade these in. It's really important that you guys make sure that whatever you are speaking of or whatever you're referring to in the fraction, you shade in so that way you can see the whole quantity and you don't get mistaken with the fractional amounts that are not shaded. All right, I'm going to add then the quantity of 2 wholes. I'm going to add on 3/5. So what I notice here is I can actually add on 1/5, 2/5. And what do you notice about my other fifth? So I actually have to draw another whole to be able to add on the 5th. Now, what is my total? Make sure, sorry, you shade those in. So what is my total? So count up your holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes and 1/5. You can have students also just look at your whole numbers and say 3 plus 2 equals 5, and 3/5 plus 3/5 equals 6/5. And together, you know that this is 1/5 over a whole, so you have 6 and 1/5. But before they get here, this is more of the abstract, they need to be able to represent it. If they are not representing it by modeling it, then they will never truly understand what this means. Especially what these 2 a whole number and a fraction would be combined to make until they see it. Okay, so once again, with addition, you simply just want to take your 2 wholes, 2 fractions, draw them out, represent it. Down here, you can clearly see that I made them different colors. So you have 3 and 3/5, 2 wholes and 3/5, 1, 2, 3. When you combine all your wholes, you count up 6, and then you have 1/5. I highly recommend that you take it simple and you just talk about what does addition mean. Literally, if I had 2 plus 2, what would that mean? What would that look like? All right, so now that's addition. Let's go on to subtraction. Subtraction gets a little tricky, and I would definitely say that this is probably one that that kids really truly need representations and being able to work with manipulatives with. All right, so let's start with 2 and 1/4. I'm going to take away 1 3/4. So immediately we see that our wholes are okay. I can take 1 whole away from 2, or 2 1/4. But when it comes to my fractional amounts, I don't have enough fourths to take 1 or 3/4 away from 1/4. So this is where it gets a little tricky. So let me show you what happens. So remember with subtraction, I'm going to write it over here so that we're all on the same page. So with subtraction, you're taking a whole, you're taking away a part, and you're coming up with the missing part, okay? So I'm going to show you 2 different strategies, one of which students can just add on to your part to get to the missing part, but this truly does act out and model what subtraction really means, okay? So here we go. So I'm going to draw out 2 wholes. Once again, I'm going to shade in. So there's my 2 1/4. I'm going to take away 1 whole. I'm going to take away 3/4. What students realize is that there's not 3/4 to take away. So what I can do is I can actually partition my whole into fourths, and therefore I can take 3/4 away. So what am I left with? I'm left with 2/4. Now, students can then see that 2/4 is also the same as 1/2, but in grade 4, it is very important for them to just identify this. This is an acceptable answer. The other name for that would be a half, but if they're here, that's okay. All right, so let's do another one. So for this one, I'm going to show you 2 different colors. That way you guys can follow along. So I have 4 3/5. I'm going to take away 2 4/5. Once again, I did this on purpose because my 4/5 is obviously a greater amount than my 3/5. So how are we going to do that? A lot of the times, you know, we were taught all these procedures to like take away and regroup and all this jazz, but really that's nonsense. We don't have to do any of that. So what does this actually mean? This means that we have 4 wholes. And eventually, once your kids start modeling this, they're going to start seeing the action, and they're going to start being able to do this abstractly. So here's my 4 wholes. And here's my 3/5. It's really important, like I said with addition, to make sure that you shade in what you're talking about, what you're referring to. So there's my 4 3/4. I am taking away 2 wholes, and that's easy for me to be able to do. And I'm taking away 4/5. That's not as easy because I only have 3/5 here. So what I'm going to do, and remember what I said, is putting that fractional bar above each other really helps because then you can see that you can partition this one into fifths as well, and I can take away 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now let's count up what we have. I'm going to circle what's left over. So I have 1 whole and 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, and 4/5. And there you go. Remember, when you model, it makes so much more sense. If I was only taught this way, oh my goodness. All right, so another strategy that your students might start doing, and it's okay if they do, is once they get the hang of this, they start putting it into an abstract form. Please do not jump to this unless they've mastered this. But if they were to go to an abstract form, so let's just go back to the 2 1/4 minus 3, 1 3/4. So if they were to go back to the abstract form, they can think about that missing part, but they can also think that 2 1/4, and if I take 1/4 away, I'm left with 1 1/4, and I'm taking 3/4 away. So I've already taken this 1 away from this whole, and I'm left with 1 1/4, and I'm taking 3/4 away. They can rename this 1 as 4/4, and they can make that addition. So they have 4/4 plus 1/4, take away 3/4, and 3/4 live in the 1/4, leaving you 1/4 left over, and it's 2/4. And I know that's confusing for us to think and like, what are we doing? But that's exactly what they're doing here. So if your kids are coming home and they're not getting the correct solution because they're trying to do this, please do me a favor and bring them back to this. Because this is truly where they start seeing why this 4/4 lives within that whole. All right, and there you go. So remember, when you are subtracting or adding with fractional amounts, you are representing it with the same denominator, representing it with a model so that students will then eventually be able to do it abstractly. The process that is going to be occurring. I hope you found this helpful. Let me turn you guys around for a second. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. And like always, I will be posting the link to the YouTube channel in my comments below. And as always, if there's anything that you would like me to cover for next Tuesday, just let me know. This was a topic that someone asked me to cover, so I'm happy to do so. And hopefully it was helpful for all of you at home. And yeah, next week, let me know what you guys need. Remember, math is great, math is fun, math is beautiful. Have a great night.